Good morning again, everybody. My name's Stuart Watkins. I'm one of the founding directors of Lighthouse IT, and I want to welcome you to our first webinar. We're going over a few points today, and that will be some recent updates on where we've been. Lighthouse IT, we're now 13, 14 years strong, a little overview of our history, and then showing some value of what we're doing for you at the moment already, and how that's changed over the last 2 or 3 years, because there's been some massive changes here at Lighthouse. We're then going to go and look at the changing landscape. So we're going to look at how things have changed from an IT perspective in terms of the way you work and the way that the threat landscape has changed along with that. And that ties into risks and ownership, which Chris will be covering. And then we're going to look at helping you navigate some of these upcoming challenges with these changes as we move into 2024. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. You'll see at the top of your Teams window that you've got a Q&A button, and so that we'd encourage you to ask some questions at the end, which the whole panel will reply to. And then finally, there's a post-feedback opportunity, and if you want to, the opportunity to book a one-to-one consultation. Okay, with that, I'll hand you over to Alex, who'll give you a brief overview of the history of Lighthouse IT.
Thanks, Stuart. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Taylor. I'm a director at Lighthouse, and I'll begin with a brief history of where we began, moving into where we are now. So Lighthouse had humble beginnings. It began in 2010, supporting our first partner, the BPIF, who I'm pleased to say are still with us today. In 2011, we opened our first office in Essex and hired our first full-time employee. Again, very pleased to say they are still with us too. 2012 marked the opening of our Midlands office, and this increased our reach to clients nationwide. Lighthouse strives to put IT security at the forefront, and so in 2015 it was determined the best course of action was to become IASME cyber security assessors. And although we don't assess our partners, it means we're focused on exactly what is needed to secure their IT systems. In 2016, we wanted to focus on becoming London's premier IT provider, which meant we needed a London base to put our fast response engineers to ensure that a time to site or to our data centre is as quick as possible. In 2017, to cover the gap between on-premise servers and the cloud, we launched our first iteration of our cloud platform in a space acquired in a Tier 3 data centre in the capital. This allows us to offer a private cloud, essentially bridging the gap between traditional servers and cloud services. In 2018, Lighthouse approved a large financial investment to onboard the revolutionary ConnectWise ecosystem, which has become the backbone to our business. And in 2019, onboarding ConnectWise, which amalgamated monitoring, patching, scripting, remote services, quoting, billing, and reporting to become the single source of truth and a key element in our business efficiency. In 2021, we launched our Cloud version 2 platform, which not only increased the space available, but also improved performance and resilience. In 2022, with staff numbers increasing, we realised our Essex office was getting too small. We needed more space, and so we acquired an old bank building in Lee. After 3 months of fit out, we were really excited to move in just before Christmas and to enjoy the new space. Our journey towards ISO accreditation began this year, and our 12-month commitment to information security was rewarded in 2023, with Lighthouse being awarded ISO 27001. So it's an international standard to manage information security, and it's the UK's equivalent to America's SOC 2. So on to the next slide. We'll talk about our staff, and probably an opportunity for some of you to match a name to a face. So in recent years, we've expanded our senior team to join Stuart and me, recruiting a head of operations in Chris Drake and a head of compliance, risk and governance in Samit Vadgama. Chris comes from a military background and brings this style of working practice into regimenting our support and service desk and heading up our onboarding of the new ConnectWise ASIO platform, being one of the first MSPs in the UK to develop this and adopt this. Samit is a proven tech specialist. After joining, he hit the ground running, spending his first 12 months working on our policies, procedures, and fundamentally our ISO 27001 accreditation. Anise Baumann joins as head of marketing, alongside some of our long-standing staff, Marcel Trombitas, our head of engineering, and Nathan Freestone, who's now head of our creative team. Then on to the next slide, some of our engineering and support team, and these are also expanding. The team are made up of tier 1 to 3 engineers, which are both office and field based. Everyone who answers support calls all hold their Microsoft Certified Professional and CompTIA qualifications. Lighthouse aims to employ up to 3 engineers a year to ensure service continuity for all of our partners. And we connect with a local college who provide young talent and give them the opportunity to thrive in the IT sector. We also have a CPD programme that ensures that all staff remain up to date in their wide range of specialisms. We also like to give back, so all our staff are shareholders in the business. This helps us achieve some of the lowest staff churn rate in the sector. So on to the next slide, looking at our accreditations and our partnerships. Some of our accreditations and partnerships we are shown on here. We're very proud of them on this slide. So at the top line, you can see things like our ISO, our IASME gold standard, our CompTIA, Trustmark Shield, the Cyber Essentials Certified Plus, as well as our CompTIA A+. And then there are also some of our accreditations of our pen testing, as well as some of our partner vendors. And on to partnerships. The Lighthouse is financially independent, no venture capital control, and so we're free to control our own technology path. This means we're not wedded to any particular vendor. For example, we're a Microsoft partner taking advantage of their strategy, product, training and qualifications. But equally, our staff have to be proficient under Google Workspace and other platforms, not only in supporting, but implementing and developing solutions around, but also securing this. We always work with the best framework vendor that suits your company and not ours. On to the next slide. So sustainability, we take our environmental footprint seriously as well. We've moved to energy plans that use 100% renewable energy and are committed to implementing environmentally friendly practices here. Hardware is recycled and reused rather than disposed of. And we also have a fully electric vehicle for London and city deliveries, transporting staff and clients. This is also powered by renewable energy. Let me hand back to Stuart now.
Thank you very much, Alex. Okay, so the next section is showing value. So this is talking about a few of the things that we're already doing for our clients and things that we've introduced over the last 2 or 3 years that you may or may not be aware of. So mainly thanks to Chris, who Alex mentioned earlier, has come from an IT military background, but when he joined us about 2.5 years ago, he took it upon himself to completely redo our service desk or our help desk, as some of you may know of it. And that has been all built or rebuilt from the ground up around an ITIL 4 based framework. And this has led to Chris installing real-time feedback dashboards in all of the offices. So we have television screens around all of the offices that show real-time monitoring of tickets. It shows the average response time, any breaches of the SLA, and that average response time has changed dramatically. It's averaging 16 minutes now, as I'm sure some of you will be aware. It goes down to 8 minutes sometimes, and previously, we were probably averaging 1 to 3 hours response time, which is unbelievably actually the industry average. Chris then put in a load of ticket categorization and prioritization procedures in there. So that leads to the tier 1 to tier 3 engineers handling products and the escalation processes around that. And unbelievably, we're now actually averaging 4,900 tickets per month. How was that possible with a relatively small team? And that's been made possible by our investment of nearly £500,000 over the last 3 years in the ConnectWise platform. And this slide just shows how the different packages within the ConnectWise platform are being integrated into our systems. And I'm going to show you some of those new features because we've become one of the first EU beta testers for ConnectWise, which we've been doing for the last year. That's now gone into production, and it's led to some new customer portals, which I'll show you some screenshots for in a minute. But with all that work that Chris has been doing, the customer feedback is exceptional, which is also live on all the offices, and our staff are really proud of it. And to the point, I can't click on the slide here, but all those dots represent continuous feedback when you've completed a ticket, and I actually use it as a sales tool with clients. I say pick a button, any button. You very rarely see any negative feedback there at all. So well done to the team. Satisfaction levels are running at 99% at the moment, and they seem to be staying around that level. In addition to that, we've introduced weekly multi-factor authentication audits and reports. So MFA, or multi-factor authentication, is one of the best ways that you can secure those accounts that you have in the cloud or on premise. And to the point that the SLT meeting has a weekly report from Vince, and any breaches where a client hasn't got MFA on their account is reported to us, and then that goes to the account manager, and that'll be rectified. We're also looking at your Microsoft Secure Scores or your equivalent secure scores in Google Workspace, whereby we find that most clients, when we get a new client, their secure score is sitting around the 20%, 24, 25% mark, and we aim to push all of our clients' secure score up to around 70%. It's not a perfect score because Microsoft tend to give you a higher score if you buy their products, but we're vendor agnostic. So where if there's a third party tool that's of better value to the clients, or potentially even does a better job, then we will use that instead of the Microsoft score. Backup monitoring, so we've done a complete upgrade on that. So all the stuff that we've been backing up for you, we have weekly reports that we produce to the SLT and daily reports. So all the senior leadership team receive a daily report at the end of the day on the backups that for all of our clients. Any backups that are broken are fixed by the engineers that day. And again, that was quite an expensive software upgrade to be able to track all of the backups, as Lighthouse has been growing sort of 30% year on year for the last 5 years. RMM agents, so these are the agents, the ConnectWise agents that we install on your machines. So they have an element of AI and self-healing and reporting built into them. So the computer, if it starts to run slowly, or if it's got a memory leak or an application keeps crashing, there is an element of logic and AI self-healing that will try and repair that automatically on your machine without even letting you know. It lets us know, but if it fixes it, it will solve the ticket itself. If it doesn't fix it, then it's escalated to one of our engineers. And we continue to do patch management for all of our clients. So this is making sure that you get all the latest security releases and all the latest updates within 14 days of release, as per the requirements of Cyber Essentials. So in Q1 2024, we'll be launching our new interactive client dashboards. Here's a few screenshots of them. So this is the new RMM version that we've invested in from ConnectWise, which will give all of our clients a portal where they can easily go in and actually see that we're doing what we say we're doing. So you can see your patch management levels, you can see all of your estate, it will control your inventory, and you can see which software is installed on that estate. A lot better than us just spamming you with weekly reports. This just allows you to go in, you can set export reports up yourself if you want them, but it's far more interactive and you can just see where you are at any point in time. Okay, so going to move on to the next section now, which is the changing landscape. So from our point of view, the threat landscape and the work landscape has changed dramatically since we started Lighthouse IT. So back in 2010, when we met some of our first clients, you were all what we call on-premise. So you were all working in an office, you all went to work every day, your computer stayed in the office, it connected to your servers that were in the office, and then we had probably a single firewall that was protecting that local area network or your office from any threats. So nowadays we've got everyone working from home and from everywhere. Part of your data may be in the cloud, or all of your data may be in the cloud, and that creates a honeypot for the threat actors, a place to attack with access of an email address and a password, and they can have access to a lot of your data. We're also now having people working on personal equipment, and this is requiring multiple firewalls. So as we can see in the bottom diagram, people are accessing everything from everywhere, maybe on work equipment, may not be, maybe on a personal mobile phone, maybe on a company issued mobile phone. So this means that the threat vector is far, far greater than it was when you were all in the office, and potentially we need to start looking at zero trust networks. So there's been some changes with what the threat actors are using as well. I'm sure most of you are aware of ChatGPT. I love it for the kids' homework. The kids love it for the kids' homework. But so do the bad actors. They like it because instead of the phishing emails coming in and being badly spelt or grammatically incorrect, everybody can now write a good email by throwing it into ChatGPT. And on top of that, the threat actors will look at your LinkedIn pages, look at your Facebook pages, so that they can do a more targeted email to you. So if you've got an interest in, as I know some of you here today have, the Wolverhampton football team, the Wolves, then that may be referenced in some of the emails that are sent to you to perk your interest. We've also got ransomware as a service now. So this means that we can go on the darknet, and for $100, you could buy a ransomware toolkit. That means something even my children could go home and do that. And then they share the profits with the people who provide the software. So the skill level isn't there anymore to hack. You can just go online and buy a toolkit to do it. With that, we need to be collecting logs from multiple locations. So before we were just collecting them from a single firewall. Now we need to understand the logs on your equipment, wherever it is, how that's getting across the internet, is it getting across in a safe way, and how that's getting to where your data is stored. Unfortunately, the insurance companies have clocked on to this as well. As I'm sure you're all aware, here you can see those dreaded annual insurance renewal forms. I hate them as much as you do, because you send them to me or you send them to our SLT team to fill in, and they are getting bigger and bigger every year. And they're, instead of saying, are you using antivirus, it's, are you using EDR? And now even the latest ones this year, it's not, are you using EDR, which is endpoint detection and response, because they don't consider antivirus good enough anymore. It's which endpoint detection and response product are you using? So along with that, the compliance and regulation. So these are tools such as Cyber Essentials, which is from the National Cybersecurity Centre, the UK National Cybersecurity Centre. It's their government's approved scheme for small to medium sized businesses, which I know a lot of you do. We do about 3 or 4 assessments for our clients each month. They are changing the question set every year, along with the changing landscape, to include more complex products. Are you using this? Have you updated your policies? Have you updated your procedures? Have you got these technical controls in place? So that's the CE, the ISO 27001, and the for the US clients, the SOC 2. So where are we now? Well, you've moved all your data into the cloud. You've let all your staff work from home. It's still your data, but it's on someone else's servers or somebody else's platform. So who's responsible for securing this data? Is it you, the client? Is it us, the MSP or the IT provider? Or is it the people that you've actually put your data with? So Google Workspace or Microsoft 365. And Chris will go on to talk about that a bit later. But it's clear that you're going to need a new set of tools to monitor this new landscape. Like I said, we've no longer got a single firewall sitting in the office with one set of logs. You're going to need to update your policies and procedures. So I had a client a few months ago, and they asked us to take a look at their IT policy, and it was that old. It still said you need permission from your manager to use the internet. So I'm not quite sure what their employees were doing during COVID. Once you've got those new policies and procedures in place, it's how do you enforce them? And really the checks and balances for those are the annual cyber essentials, where an assessor will come in and make sure that you're actually doing what you're saying you're doing in those policies and procedures. So what's needed? Well, it somewhat depends on what your risk appetite is. And generally we find that clients have a very low risk, so high risk appetite until something goes wrong. And again, with budgets, there's no budget available until there's a big breach or incident, as we like to call it here. And we offer some risk assessments to try and fill the gaps. So for all our existing clients, we can offer you a few different risk assessments. Some are from ConnectWise, some are more insurance based, to try and help share that responsibility of understanding where these gaps may be in your business. And don't just take our word for it. Have a look at what your insurance company is actually asking you to have. Have a look what your PCI compliance is actually asking you to have. So that's where if you take any credit card data on your website, or you've got staff that are taking credit cards, you have to fill out this huge PCI compliance form every year. And there's loads of tick boxes in there, and there's loads of acronyms, and I don't want to get dumbed down into all of those acronyms today, but are you just ticking the box because you want that tender, and it's on the tender requirements? Are you just ticking that box because you need it to be part of that trade association? And are you really understanding which boxes you're actually ticking on your insurance forms? Because if it does come to a claim, then they're probably not going to pay out if you tick something that you actually haven't got. Staff training, really important. A lot of the insurance documents we're seeing now are saying that you must train staff on cyber awareness when they join the company, and all staff must receive training annually. It's not a lot of money. We've got 3 different training platforms that we use, but it's probably starting around £20 per user per annum for a whole plethora of different training courses. And it's no good making the staff do the same training course year after year. They're going to get bored. And the threats will have changed, and the way that the bad actors will have changed, so the training will need to be updated in accordance to that. So what I'm really asking you is, do you really have the tools that you need to comply? And you're probably asking, how much does all this cost? Well, we can get to that a bit later, but in some cases it could be the price of a cup of coffee per staff member per month, or it could be the price of a good meal per staff member per month. But if you look at the Microsoft 365 licensing, there's a reason that the E1 license is £3 and the E5 license is 10 times that, because it includes the better security products, or some of them, and there is a cost to some of these tools. So with that in mind, and I don't want to get bogged down into what the tools are, but we have put them on our new website, and there's a slide here of some of the different tools that we offer, and another one here briefly mentioning the endpoint detection and response, or the MDR, which is linked to a security operations center 24/7. That is. So SOC services, SaaS security, and endpoint management. But really, for each of you, the mix of the tools that are required are going to be different, and it's going to be based on potentially the industry you work, the way you work, how you work, what software that you've got in place that needs to be covered. There isn't really a one size fits all for it. So with that, I'm going to pass you over to Chris, who's going to talk about some of the risk and the ownership factors of this.
Perfect. Thank you, Stuart. Good morning, everyone. So during the next sections, I'm going to cover off some of the areas around the risk and the ownerships, talk around the responsibility, unpick this a little bit further into some of the areas that Stuart mentioned around, why the staff training is important. Do you have the tools? How do you know if you've got the tools? Okay. So starting off with the initial infographic that you're looking at the moment, simple representation of the life cycle of the ICT infrastructure. In the top right hand corner, you can see that you've got the data owner. So data owner being yourselves, individuals for your organizations. Okay, you own that data. In the bottom section there, you can see the information technology team. So that would be ourselves as an MSP, being the custodians of the data, working with that data on your behalf and helping you secure that data. And in the top left-hand corner, you'll see that there's an information security piece. And this is effectively the gap that's being created by emerging risks in the market and the current threats that we are now seeing in the environments that you want to work in. So let's drilling down on this a little bit more with the data owner. So data owner being yourselves, okay, the role that fills. establishing budgets for protecting the data. Okay, how do you make the decisions without knowing the facts? Right, that's the first question I would approach. How do you know what the risks are? Okay, what is your organization's current risk exposure? Okay, for example, do you have the assessment tools to know whether you've got corporate data that's currently for sale on the dark web, as an example? Or do you know if somebody's accessed your 365 or Google tenancy in the early hours of the morning? What monitoring systems have you got there? And the information security piece in the top left-hand corner is effectively the services that are going to feed data back to yourselves as the data owners through an assessment tool, which will then enable you to make informed decisions. Okay, and ideally, I mean that the process in itself has to be ongoing. Okay, so it's a life cycle where it continually goes under review. The threats are continually changing. So effectively, what we're looking at is giving the data owner the ability to have visibility at risk and understanding the business risk exposure, and then being able to make the decisions with the technology team on how to mitigate those risks. So really, I think in this, the key message on this first slide would be that security never sleeps, and it is the journey with no endpoint. Moving on to the next slide, we're going to look at some key stats and take you through this. So at the top there, you can see there's a snippet, which was a report provided by the IBM Security Report 2023 this year, Q2. And it's showing us that the global average cost of a data breach has reached 4.45 million per breach. Okay. In the bottom left-hand corner, you've got the representation of a per record cost. And you can see from 2017 through to 2023 that it's an ever-increasing cost on a per record basis. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see there's a statistic. And again, this all came out sort of general public knowledge on a report showing that even after the insurance companies are paying out, even after they are settling the ransomware attacks, the organizations are only getting back 65% of their data. Okay, so to you as an organization and individuals, the question I would ask is, what is that 35% that's missing consisting of? What is that? Is it your payroll? Is it your corporate client lists? Is it your supply chain information, key contacts? Okay. So it gives you a bit of an idea around this feeding back into what Stuart was saying around the insurance. So the insurance are seeing these payouts. They are now sort of doing what insurance companies do, and they are making more in-depth questionnaires to make you accountable and making you liable for that risk. Okay. Moving through to the next slide. So this is quite an interesting one, and I quite like this one. It's a breakdown of the malicious data by the threat vectors. Okay. And if we start in the top four sections, start at the top right corner, and you can work our way clockwise around this. In the top right corner, you can see you've got your compromised credentials, which is accounted for 19% of the breaches. Okay, so compromised credentials. So if you consider, for example, that your Office 365 environment, tenancy, or Google, they contain the credentials, okay, and that's where it's being managed. You've got the right-hand side following it around, cloud misconfigurations. Again, it's a cloud-based system, and that's quite a broad cloud misconfigurations because it could be a lot of things in the cloud. Again, 19%. Moving on to vulnerability in third-party software at the bottom there. So vulnerabilities in the software could be actual software vulnerabilities. So that's scanning for known bugs and things that are causing there to be issues within the actual software itself. And at the bottom there, you've got phishing, which again we all get. We all see phishing emails coming through, and that sort of looks after about 14% of the known breaches. So when you combine that all, you are looking that in fact there's around 68% of the breaches are caused by just these key four areas. But you could even go a step further and say, at the top you've got social engineering, business emails, and they're going to be cloud-based systems. But what do they all have in common? Okay, nearly 75% of the known malicious threat vectors, they're all externally controlled. They're all interact with the cloud in some form or another. Okay, and so it's quite interesting to think that, as Stuart pointed out before, about being on-prem and having firewalls, infrastructure and technology has moved into the cloud. The risk hasn't gone away, it's just transformed into a different risk, okay, and it's moved with it. And what we're looking at is educating, understanding those risks, and then working with our partners to make sure they're aware of those risks as well. So on the next slide, this is a great example of one of the things that Lighthouse has worked on throughout 2023, which is the implementation of a new EDR. So as Stuart mentioned, it was an endpoint detection and response. And we have gone to market, done extensive research and testing, and we used ourselves as guinea pigs. And we went and spent hundreds of hours on this. And we've now launched our own product platform with SentinelOne in the partnership, which is now live. And this product is designed for all intents and purposes to replace the antivirus moving forward as the new baseline standard. And this is some figures that you can see from the 2023 MITRE Ingenuity Attack Evaluation reports. So we can provide some more information on these reports if you're interested afterwards, and get some tech data sheets across. But going on to the next slide, I think really with that slide and the following one you're about to see, the key thing here, is that we are vendor agnostic. Okay, one thing in IT that we don't have a lack of is tools and technology. There is more technology out there than you'd know what to do with. There's 30 different types of EDR, but why is one better than the other? And that's really, I think, where we've done a lot of work this year, is actually going to market, doing the investigation, reaching out, making new partnerships, and going through a testing. And what you're looking at here is just a small snippet of some of the things that we can now integrate into, start to collect logs from. And you'll recognize there's some, really sizable products in there. You've got the Salesforce, you've got your AWS, Cisco, 365, Google. But we are vendor agnostic, and I think we do pride ourselves in making sure that we're going to market and making sure that the correct solutions are put in place to better support your organizations. So planning for the changes ahead going into 2024. Lighthouse have had to put a lot of work in to get ourselves in a position to make sure we can better support you and prepare you for the changing landscape ahead. And for the next section, just as a light introduction, Lighthouse are going to be holding an in-person event in Q1 2024. And it's going to be around security, understanding how the culture is changing. We're going to have some dedicated speakers there. And what I'd like to do now is to take you through some of the content that is going to be covered during the in-person event. I'm not going to go into too much detail because there's quite a lot of information to absorb, but just to give you some snippets around where we're at. Okay, so 2023, Lighthouse have had to move into the adoption of the NIST framework, okay, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And we've had to adopt this to enable to deliver these services and infrastructure support to yourselves. So the cybersecurity framework that we're looking at here is benchmark of excellence in the IT industry, recognized internationally by all IT professionals. And what it does is it provides a baseline for how you build your security stack and how you address the 5 key areas of the security stack, which is the identification of the risk. How are you protecting against the risk? How are you detecting it? And then your response and recovery. And not going into too much sort of detail with it, but I think Stuart mentioned earlier on about how we are now doing MFA audits on your tenancies, for example. So as you can see underneath the protection, the multi-factor authentication is forming part of the protection stage. So we've already started doing some of this work for you. And then there is some elements there at the bottom about endpoint detection and response. Some of you have already onboarded with the Sentinel product and are already starting to tick some of this framework off. But this is a great sort of representation to understand, like, not everybody will need everything, not everyone requires it because your infrastructure and your organizations work differently, but it gives you a guideline on what we need to be looking to achieve within protecting your organization. So when we talk about cybersecurity, what we're talking about here is the 3 pillars of cybersecurity. So this illustration is commonly known, readily available online. And I quite like it in the sense that what it does is it shows you how the risk is being represented here by the binding element between the 3 processes. So it's how the processes, technology, and people interact in your organization and that would generally reflect on how successful your security solution will be. So it's, are your people trained? Are they aware of security? Do you have phishing campaigns? Do you have processes in place to ensure that the NIST framework will hold up if there's an incident? And do you have the technology reporting back to you, going back to the data owner and the technology provider and the security system? The technology needs to be feeding that information back to the people. Okay, so they're symbiotic by nature, and that's exactly what we're going to look at now. So this next section, going into a little bit more detail, it's about the positive and the negative impacts that it can have if there are areas of the people, process, and technology which are not present. Okay, so for example, at the top, if you're missing all three, you have no security defenses whatsoever. Your people are not trained, they're not aware, your processes are outdated, and your technology isn't fit for purpose. Okay, but for example, if you have a look, go 2 stops down, and you have no people, but you do have the processes, but you don't have the technology, the outcome is more than likely going to be a wasted effort, because you've got no people implementing the processes, and you don't have the processes supporting the technology, which loops back to the people. It's very symbiotic. There's not one area in this that can be neglected if you're looking for a success outcome. And then I think a last example, which is my favorite, coming from operations background, at the bottom, is if you have people on board, but you don't have any processes that are being managed or followed through, but you have the technology, you get inconsistent operation, and consistent operation is key for that sort of scalability that you're all going to need with the growth. Okay, so those areas are what we will be touching on in a lot more detail at the in-person event, and we'll probably do some interactive exercises, talking about yourselves individually, but everyone has a very unique setup at the moment. Their security stack's very different, and now everyone has different requirements. But this is where the assessment tools, the vulnerability scanning, the dark web monitoring, and as Alex mentioned at the start of this presentation, the ASIO platform that we've launched has the capabilities to scale into this entire framework for your organizations. So we're now ready to take you on that journey in 2024. And then just to touch on the last slide from myself, just some information around some interesting snippets about, why we're on this journey. As here, SMBs are wanting MSPs to manage the cybersecurity, but they will switch providers if service doesn't meet their specific needs. Now, for us, that's quite a strong quote, in the sense that there is a lot of our sort of clients and prospects are coming to us, and it's now almost expected that we're in this space. Now we are, and now we're prepared, and it's tested, and it's fully operational. And 87% of SMBs are already using an MSP. So everyone on this call forms part of that 87% statistic. You outsource, and you partner with Lighthouse for your support and technology support. And 89% would consider moving to a new MSP if they offered the right cybersecurity solution. Okay, it's interesting stat, that one. So we've spent a lot of time making sure that we've got the best in breed products, and make sure we've got the best technology stack available in the market. So we are really looking at an enterprise grade security stack that's designed and targeted for the SMBs of our clients. And then the final one, which is, the SMBs are willing to pay 37% more per year for the right cybersecurity solution. So going through the educational piece, understanding the risks, looking at what does a business outage look like for us for 10 days, okay, and weighing up the costs and understanding that. And it's, more and more now we're having these conversations where clients are actually separating their initial IT budget, and they're creating a security budget, because the IT budget can't stretch far enough into the security area, and it's an ever-changing environment. The risk is changing constantly. It needs continuous review. Okay, what was a problem yesterday might not be a problem tomorrow, but 2 days from now there might be a new threat. There'll be a new risk. So everything that we've spoken about today, with the launch of ASIO and everything that Lighthouse has been building in the background, is to better prepare you for the changing climate next year. And a lot of that is going to be AI-driven endpoint detection and response, behavioral engines. It's the next level of technology which is going to be needed. Okay.
Thank you, Chris. And I think just picking up on a few of the points that you mentioned there, at Lighthouse, we're not afraid to change provider for the best solution. You know, we were the biggest Advanced reseller in the UK a few years ago. We saw some of the shortcomings in that, and we moved to WebRoot. Again, then we moved to Bitdefender, and now we would recommend Sentinel-1. And again, with our backup strategy, there's lots of companies selling out backup software there. We've changed that about 6-7 times in 13 years till we've actually got it to a point that we can restore your stuff almost instantly with our cloud DR platform. As you know, a lot of people were pushing stuff out to cloud backup, but it was going to take you 2 weeks to download it all and get up and running again. So these new products, they're enterprise grade products that can be sold at an SME price, so a small cost per user, rather than having to invest £2 million into your own security operations center 24/7 NOC. You can just add these on at a small cost per user per month. And that is, we're able to do that because we've partnered with ConnectWise, which is nearly a £4 billion turnover company, international company. So we're going to open, as said previously, we're going to announce the date of our Q1 2024 in-person event. There'll be free beer, drinks, wine, food. So hopefully we'll get plenty of you along for that.